Okay, so this is it. I will let our speakers introduce themselves. They have come all the way down from Quebec City just for this, so you are quite lucky to get them. So I will give the floor to our speakers.
Hi, everyone. We're really happy to be with you tonight to talk to you about how we made the audio on our latest game, which is New Tales from the Borderlands. We'll start by presenting ourselves and our small audio teams that was involved in the creation of New Tales from the Borderlands. Maybe we'll start with Christian while I try to make that work.
Okay, so hey, I'm Christian Pacaud. I've worked at Ubisoft Quebec, IAM Studios, and Gearbox Studio Quebec. I've worked as an audio designer, mainly on environmental sounds, but also a fair chunk of sound effects and a bit of cinematic sound design. I evolved towards music design and supervisor roles throughout the years, with a short stint as audio lead as well. New Tales from the Borderlands was my first game as music composer.
Hi, I'm Antoine. I've been an audio designer at Gearbox for 6 years already. Before that, I worked at Ubisoft for 5 years, where I met Christian and Joe. And I also did some TV post-production for CBC. Over the years, I think I developed a knack for the more technical side of things. And I'm here to give you an overview of the systems we implemented on the game.
So I'm Jonathan Magnan. I'm the audio director at Gearbox Studio Quebec in Montreal. I started my career 17 years ago. I spent a decade at Ubisoft Quebec, where I've always been kind of jack of all trades kind of guy, never a master of none, but it made me touch pretty much every single element of game design, of audio design, and also building up the infrastructure of a growing company. So that's why when I had the chance to start a team from scratch at Gearbox, I totally jumped on the adventure. And on joining us on this journey was Alexis Marzin, a skilled sound designer and Foley artist. And in the course of the production, we adopted a young Padawan, Dominique Gaumont, who's with us tonight. Hello, Dominique. So what is New Tales from the Borderlands? I'm going to take my notes for that. The original Tales from the Borderlands was produced and released by Telltale Game in 2014. Telltale Game at that time licensed the brand Borderlands from Gearbox to produce the title. Following their closure in 2018, Gearbox brought back the rights to the game, and Gearbox Studio Quebec was tasked to make a spiritual successor for this game, to bring back the brand and keep attention on the Borderlands universe. We are here to speak about our experience on building this game, because even though as a team we have a lot of experience making games, our expertise was mostly built around open world, a huge open world with systemic gameplay. And this beast is totally different. It's a single-player experience. For a single-player experience, only one camera perspective. The player has no control over the camera. He has control of what's going on. We have branching scenes, but that's pretty much it. So it sounds like a really, really simple game to make, but it was not. It's never easy. The main challenge on this one would be the sheer amount of cinematic data. For example, we shot mocap for over a year, and all that data was processed in Cascade. And we had to, and we were a really small audio team. Our timeline was really short, and we wanted to be able to deliver audio quality. So our goal was to cover a vast amount of content as efficiently as possible. So this presentation will be a little bit all over the place, from high level to technical, with examples and story on how we prepared ourselves to face new types of challenges, and how, to the best of our knowledge, we tried to make sure that we were armed with everything we needed to do so. So we'll start by showing you a quick glimpse of what it looks like. If it works. Sounds like mostly, yeah.
cannot stress enough how moronic this is. Metal! This rules!
Do me again.
Do not! Do not, do not, do not, do not! Ow, 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 ow. My turn. No, that ain't gonna happen. Oh, God.
Oh man, friends barreling straight for the shark circling on who they're about to get a serious taste of fist. Bam! A haymaker to the shark face. Beautiful. Behind you. Oh, she uppercuts it through its face. That is so metal. Ugh! It slimed me! I feel like I'm getting eaten by condiments! Ugh! Ugh! Mm. Gross. Still alive.
Ah, now it works. Sorry. We tried everything for half an hour and everything was working fine. Again, if it can happen, it will happen. So for those of you who never seen or played a game like this one, it's a narrative interactive game, basically a succession of cinematic with branching outcomes. So the player can make some choice, basically like the one that you're seeing right now. It's a dialogue choice that's gonna change if you're moving to scene A or scene B. Those choices can also happen in quick time events, which is a succession of input that you need to successfully enter, and then you're gonna have a success or a win. And from time to time, you get the control of the character in a free roaming area to gather clue or speak with people. We call those the free roaming sequences. We knew that we had a really short amount of time and a really small team and a production in Waterfall, so we expected a hard landing. To give you an overview, we started by analyzing what would be the game, so we knew we had around 15 hours of mocap data, more than 2,500 scenes, including dialogue choice, branching outcome, around 10 levels. 5 of them were free roaming zones, 6 pre-rendered scenes, 5 musical montage. Looking at it, we realized that it was more like an audio production, an audio-visual production than an open game. So we determined that our best approach would be to build tools to be able to create a base layer on all the scene as effortless as possible, and figure out how we could build some pipelines to get ourselves in a position to build sounds for thousands of individual scenes efficiently. First, I'll let Antoine talk about all the systems that we put in place. All the systems. Tu peux cliquer à gauche pour avancer si ça marche.
If it works. So yeah, like Joe said, Newtel was like making a movie, but with using game tools and workflows. So we kind of have to think about it a little bit. This meant we would have no post-production phase where we could work on a finished product. We had to do it at the same time as the production, basically. And since we needed to do that, we had to give up doing everything to picture. How can we automate as much stuff as possible? We started by, what's the next slide? Before that. We started by determining a kind of baseline vision of how we wanted this game to sound, basically. And without much of a surprise, we decided that we would put more emphasis on VOs and musics. They would be the star of the game. It gave us a track to follow, basically. Why? Because like Joe said, it's pretty much a cinematic experience. You're kind of a passive player, basically, which means there would be lots of dialogues, and music is always a powerful tool to convey emotions. For the rest of the element, we kind of used a baseline like a motto or a goal where that was consistent level of detail across the board leaves a better overall impression of quality. Basically what this meant was that we would not spend more time or attention on a part of the game, and we would rather try to cover everything with the same amount of details. Like we would not try to polish the first hour of the game more than the rest. Just basically have consistent level across the board. It was hard from the beginning to know what to systemize versus what to leave in SFX production later, because these decisions kind of happened at the same time as the rest of the teams were kind of working out how they would do the game. So there was a concept of the timing of some of the decisions we had to take versus the resources we had available at the moment to do those developments. So we kind of started by looking at what the systems that we would need to put in place, or that things that would have to happen in the authoring tool in Wise. We use Wise. So a couple of things that were sorted out was weapons. It's the Borderlands game, so there are of course guns. And after talking with the VFX team, we determined that it was better to have like more of a game system for weapons, where like an input would shoot, like not an input because there's no input, but like an event on a track or something, whatever, would fire the muzzle flash, the audio that would fire a bullet, that would have bullets impact, all that kind of things was better than to try to fake it in a cinematic. Also ambiances and reverbs, because there's a lot of sequences back to back, and having like a baseline reverb like in a game would be easier to have continuity between the scenes, like panning, attenuations, and since we have free walk sequence, sometimes we do have like the more classic game thing. Also voice design and effects, just like for classic localization purpose, but we still ended up doing some offline processing. It was a pick and choose method depending on who had the time to do it, basically. Also some post-mastering, voice processing, some EQ compression in Wise. And one of the most important things that I will cover a little bit later is the Foley and footsteps. It's like 15 hours of mocap, so lots of animations to cover by hand, so we had to be clever about that. I'm going to start by talking a little bit about the ambiances. Like you see, it was a very simple level, just that, and all the actions happen in those kind of really small environments. So we kind of decided to go with the simple ambience tools. We didn't invest much on them. It was not meant to be in the forefront anyway. Ambience beds do sometimes clash with the music. And like I said, music was meant to be in the forefront. So we just created a simple ambience volume and the reverb volume, a simple 3D emitter to place in the world and play like 3D sounds. We also didn't really have an acoustic system because everything was happening in one location. There was no transition. Actually, we did have like one door in the entire game, and we simply did it with a state-based transition in Wise. We also created a really neat tool that we call like the distributed ambience emitter, where we could play multi-position sound on certain static mesh or objects at runtime. So the tool would basically find them and post the event right on the objects at runtime, like for computers, fans, plants, and whatnot. This was an easy win to get like 3D objects in the world. And since, like you saw, there's a lot of camera cuts, and since they were placed in 3D, we would get like a free panning without having to like do it in the dock. Of course, there was sometimes elements of ambience that we wanted to pop out, like because they were like really close shots or because they were important, and we would just add them on top on the SFX track, which is like the cinematic track, basically. All right, next is Foley. At some point, before like really thinking about it, we asked ourselves, do we even put Foley on this game? Like Tales 1 didn't have Foley, really, some footsteps here and there. But like it was like a couple of years later, we said, yes, we want Foley. Everybody loves Foley. Foley is cool, it gives so much life to the characters. So we went with a real-time Foley loop approach. I don't know if everyone is familiar with that kind of technology. Basically, it's like we calculate at runtime like the velocity of bones, and in its outputs an RTPC that modulates a loop. Works really well, and we also had like a customization tools where we could have like different sets of clothes per characters for each limbs. One cool thing we decided also was that we would not add many clothing in the SFX tracks. Remember that baseline we said is that if we start like to punctuate or put emphasis on some movements in the FX track, this could create like some kind of, oh, why did I hear that sound there and not there? So we kind of left the tool do the Foley. Sometimes we kind of lacked some of the movements, but I think overall it gave us like a really solid base, and basically it made itself. So that was really nice. Some things that we didn't anticipate was that sometimes characters do move off screen. So we were sometimes hearing like Foley going in the background, and since the animators didn't really like polish those animations, they would like sometimes like pop like that. So we found some ways to work around that. Footsteps. Also, like footsteps tagging is the killer of motivation. So we also tried to do like basically offline footstep tagging approach. It was not really. It was kind of a mix between offline and runtime. But we kind of developed a tool where we could like select a bunch of animations, run the tools, and it would output a bunch of footsteps like you're seeing on the animation sequencer track. And there would also be like some parameters, some velocity impact of the footsteps that would be calculated. And this would be like at runtime sent as an RTPC to the audio event. What was really nice about that is that since all this game is mocap data, and it was based basically on human performance. Human performance is really subtle with lots of details versus like a run cycle or a walk cycle where it's just like a character doing basically the same movement all the time. So it gave us a lot of possibilities to tweak some of the values and give a lot more, really more realistic render of the footsteps, basically. And like the Foley, we had like a customization where we could have different types of shoes per characters. We had boots, shoes, even heels. So that was really nice. I've put together some videos that give example of the systemic Foley. 2 of them actually. So everything you will hear is real, is runtime. There was no men work involved. It's just like we put those things there, press play, and this is how it sounds like. And we also kind of realized that it works really well with robots.
Have you accomplished some extraordinary business transaction to warrant your acknowledgement on this list?
I survived Malawan's invasion. And I like to think that my social influence has kept the city together after the war left it in damn near ruins.
No, would have been a more succinct answer.
Look, I'm working on it.
Why? This list is merely the opinion of other humans. You should not value it. As a machine, I find this accolade pointless to strive for.
Even if I didn't care, everyone else does, which makes it important. It's my only hope of breaking into the business world.
Seeking the approval of others seldom leads to happiness.
How would you know? You're an assassination bot.
Trained in how to hurt people.
What does that have to do with...
You seek outside approval because you hate yourself.
Mr. Strongfork! CEO of the Atlas Company. I am your assistant.
Yeah, Timmy, I know.
Then now is my time to shine! Let me assist you!
Wait, Timmy, what?
I will go on a quest to retrieve what you have lost. Rescue mission!
You would do that? For me?
Of course I would. Mr. Strongfork! CEO of the Atlas Company. Doing anything and everything for you is literally the purpose of my existence.
Yikes.
Yeah, well, that's a fair point, actually. All right. Dr. Dar, let's try this again. On Timmy.
So there's another video where basically it's not because it's like procedural and at runtime that it cannot be used like more creatively. And there's a character in the game called Reba. She's like a bigger than nature character, and we thought we would use the Foley system to exaggerate her clothing in a funny way. She wears some super like stretchy leather.
Anything else you want to show me?
No, I think that about does it.
Well, that just about covers the front of the shop. Let's see that back room.
I don't have a back room.
What's that?
Decorative.
Oh my god, I always said you should have been a comedian. You never failed to make me laugh. Ugh, so good.
Wait a minute.
Fran, your weirdness was cute at first, but now I'm remembering why we never invited you to stuff.
Let go. This is going to be awkward.
All right, so as for the mix, the game was produced in 5.1. It was mixed in 7.1. We didn't really started to invest in Atmos stuff yet. Most of that game actually was produced in pandemic and work from home, so that's why we kept it simple like that. As far as positioning goes, we treated it more like a film, as expected. VO was mostly 2D in the center. Sometimes we had like really, really soft panning if a character was out of bounds. And when we went in the free walk sequence, it was more like a classic game, full 3D, like you would expect like any adventure game, basically. Some of the things we developed early, like I said, and we thought would be a really good idea was a concept of mixing states, since we had like really defined type of sequences, like the actual cinematic, a choice sequence, a QTE. We said, oh, let's put on a mixing state that we could like balance some things. That's something we ended up not really using that much. We kind of simply used it to duck some of the 3D ambient stuff. Like I said, it was a cool thing to have like those free pannings, but sometimes like if camera was moving around a lot, it would like snap those fires around and those trees or whatever, and we kind of ducked them around to leave the action and the VOs more in the forefronts. Couple of mixed tricks we did use was like the side chaining of VOs to duck the weapons, the monsters, even the music sometimes. Allowed us to put those elements actually louder in the mix, and we also ended up never really losing the VOs. We may have overdone that. Another cool thing we did was like, since it's a cinematic thing, and most of the actual sound effects were stems, we kind of baked the perspective inside the tracks, and they were not like 3D per se, but we kind of wanted to give like and since the reverb was actually at runtime, we kind of wanted to give a distance perception with an aux-send value, basically. So the further away the listener was from the object, basically, we would just increase the send to the wet, would give us like a better perception of distance. And in the sequence, since it's a cinematic experience, basically you can imagine that some of the camera guys started using different lens, focal length size. And 50 millimeter was the default value, but we had like smaller lenses and bigger lenses. And we kind of developed an RTPC that would be applied at runtime during the sequences to kind of minimize that thing. Because imagine if like the focal length is really big, so basically the camera is really far, but it's like kind of zoomed in. This would like I said before, it would increase the width, but we kind of would decrease it because of that to basically match the perspective it's meant to look like. I don't know if that makes sense. Hello. Yeah, one of the most powerful tools of linear audio is, of course, automation. So since we were exporting a lot of data in and out, to limit the iteration time, we kind of tried to give us the ability to automate outside of the DAW as much as possible. So we kind of developed an RTPC track in the Wise Unreal sequencer, where basically we could set a global RTPC or an RTPC per object. That was really neat, really, really helpful. We also used quite a bit the time feature in Wise because it's a linear game, so it was really easy to automate the volume of some. Like this actual screenshot is like somebody being thrown away. So you can imagine like the character screams, and the volume goes really low, and then the send to the wet goes really high. It gives like the kind of movement from the distance, basically. That's pretty much it for me, actually. I'll leave the puck to Joe.
So yeah, from that point, we had systems that cover mostly of the base of the game, but now we had to tackle the rest of it, which is producing sound specifically for single scenes that needed it to have more details on them. So the question we ask ourselves is how can we put ourselves to be able to create unique data on all the scenes in an efficient way and integrate that data as fluidly as possible. We rapidly decided that we could not go integrate single sound and effects on each track of those scenes. It would take too much time, too much tweak, and too much sync. So we decided to go with a stem approach. So every single scene would trigger multiple stems at first frame. They would be hooked to bones or object in the world, or we also did like full 5-1 stems. So they would play at the position and object they would be hooked to, so they would follow padding of the camera. Except for voice, voice needed to be perfectly synced with the mocap data and divided by sentence for localization and subtitle issue. But even with that approach, it is still a huge task to create a session for thousands of scenes. So we needed a plan. So the first step that we took was analyzing the systems that were really in place and see how we can interject in those systems and get help from them. So I'll start by just a big overview of the tools that we use, and afterwards I will go into more detail on how we use them to our advantage. So this is Beanie. Beanie was our script writing tools. It was built specifically to write games like this. You can write script with branching outcomes, store the choice as value, and those value can be stored and used further in the timeline to make other change in the flow. Also, every element in the script can become an asset reference with unique ID, so like character, props, set, dialogue can be referred in the script. And you can also play the whole game in there via text-to-speech. Beanie became the backbone of our game. You're probably familiar with the next two, Unreal and Wise. We built the game using Unreal. And we use all the link reference that was in Beanie to generate the whole game structure in blueprints. So you might recognize in the blueprint the same structure that you've seen before in the script tool. But instead of having a text node, you'd get a sequencer with everything it needed, so character, props, scenes. Speaking of needed data, I told you that Beanie was able to play back the whole game in text-to-speech, so we also used it to generate the whole voiceover structure in Wise. Next one might be a little bit more obscure for some people, but they are ShotGrid and Maya. ShotGrid is part of the Autodesk family, the same company that makes Maya. It's a data tracking tool, kind of a database that can host and link data. It can also run script that can affect the data. It sounds like a boring tool, but it ended up being the lubricant between all our software, and it was pretty much the key for us to get into those pipelines and used it. Maya was the animation software. It was used using ShotGrid as a bridge. The animation team was able to create their scene based on the information gathered from Beanie and then exported, even batch exported to Unreal. That part is super complex, but if you're curious, there's a full talk, a GDC talk on it done by our friend Marion Guignol that you can find on the web. So that's a quick recap that what was in place when we started, or when we started thinking on how we could use that. So we had Beanie, our script writing tool. Beanie, it was used to create the backbone of the game, the episode graph. And from Beanie, we extracted our TempVO to Wise. From Beanie, we populated ShotGrid to get all the information needed to build the basic scene layout in Maya. ShotGrid was also linked, it also linked our voiceover files to their corresponding Maya scene, and Maya could export the final result to Unreal. Our goal was to find a way to use those pipelines at our advantage. So for the SFX stems creation, one of the big part of the job that was ahead of us was to create those sessions where we could host our video and create those stems. It takes a sheer amount of time, and getting up-to-date video is an issue. So, yeah, it was okay. So ShotGrid was used by our animation team to review the whole game. So they use a script that was talking to Unreal and generate scene renders every day. So there was somewhere on the network there was a folder with always up to date rendered of the scenes. So the idea that sparked was, can we use those renders as base for our session or the session? So not clicking in the right place. We used we built a script that we triggered through ShotGrid that was able to generate 2-track template automatically. So we could generate a chunk of the game with link to those video that was stored over the network, so always up to date. The second track that we built was a marker track. So that marker track was synced with the video track. It has the proper name, so it was already easy for someone to just get in there, do the sound design, and export as stems with different outputs, main character, left arm, or for a full stem. So it was really more fluid, a more fluid way to create our session into new. We use Nuendo as a DAW. Moving on to voiceover. Almost all of our voiceover data come from the mocap floor. So the recording and the first edit of the waves was outsourced. But I wanted to make sure that our files were named properly and that our outsourcer could do it easily. So what we did is that we created a marker generator that was containing two marker. One marker that had the proper script, and a cycle marker that contained the proper file name. So it was really easy for them to work on a scene, open those markers, and export, just highlight the correct dialogue and output them. Also, in the export part of Reaper, we asked to keep the metadata, and the metadata contained the time code and the time and the date was recorded. It was stored in a WAV file. So we created a small importer, which is the one that you're seeing here. And that importer was at first tagging all our voice as recorded, but also grabbing the metadata and the time code it was recorded from. Then the next time an animator would open a scene in Maya and export it to Unreal, the WAV file would automatically get the proper timing and put itself to the right place. So without knowing it, the animator were working for us. They were putting all our voice where it needed to be. So Support scene editing, yeah. Because, yeah, I told you that we based our games in full stems launching at the first frame of every single scene, but we're making games and scenes change. Our game is a succession of multiple scenes, so it was like normal during our polish phase to decide to shorten those scenes to make it more snappier. So what happened when you chop the first frame or the five first frame of a scene where we got all our sounds starting at the first frame, we would get unsynced. So we needed to support scene editing. The reflection that we made is how are we doing this scene editing? So it was still happening in ShotGrid. So can we use that for us also, not do it by ourselves? So someone in the cinematic team would decide to remove 5 frames from a scene. It would happen in ShotGrid. They would change the start and end frame of the scene, and they would call a batch export to Maya and send that to Unreal. So can we use that process to do that job for us also? So what we did is that if an audio was happening outside of a range of a scene that's being trimmed, why not speak directly to the work unit and to the object that is outside of the range and move the start point to the corresponding place? So again, they were working for us without knowing it. So an animator would export a scene, check out the work unit, export their scene, and everything would kept in sync. At this point, I think it'd be cool for you to see a full flow of how we build the game from the layout to the final product. You'll notice that there will be multiple versions of the same scene, and you'll notice that in one of them there will be a major lag happening, and I let it there purposely. It's because lag can happen in the game, and it might affect sync. A lag like the one that you're going to see never happen in the real product, only in an engine capture, but on older platform like Xbox or PS4, in an AV transition that would have characters and level, a noticeable lag could happen. So what we did is we used Wise Seek feature and used a tool that was able to keep track of the frame count. So in the first few frames of a scene, we could use Wise Seek to catch up those missing frames. So we always been synced.
On your knees.
Get on your knees.
No.
The boy and the bot, where are they?
Bot sighted.
Hello.
On your knees.
Yes.
Rebel apprehended.
Well done. You're good at this.
Thank you.
Love you.
Love you too.
What?
Where's the boy?
Where's the boy?
On your knees!
Get on your knees!
No.
The boy and the bot, where are they?
Bot sighted! Hello.
On your knees!
Yes.
Rebel apprehended!
Well done, you're really, really good at this.
Oh, thank you.
Love you.
I love you too.
What?
Where's the boy? Where's the boy? Respond!
Say something!
Do it now! On your knees!
Get on your knees! No.
The boy and the bot, where are they?
Bot sighted! On your knees! Rebel apprehended!
Well done, you're really, really good at this.
Oh, thank you.
Love you.
I love you too.
What?
Where's the boy? Where's the boy? Respond!
Say something!
Do it now!
No.
The boy and the bot, where are they? Bot sighted! Hello? On your knees! Yes. Rebel apprehended!
Well done, you're really, really good at this.
Oh, thank you.
Love you.
I love you too.
What?
Where's the boy? Where's the boy?
What boy?
That boy.
Ah, him. I fired him a week ago.
Why?
Incompetence.
That sounds like a management problem. Maybe you didn't give him the tools he needed to succeed. Had you gone over a personal development plan with him? Prepare to fire! Preparing!
So now, let's move on to music with Maestro Pacaud.
Okay. So I'm going to read you a little tale. On my end, I'm going to explain some of the processes that shape the production of the music for New Tales. I'll focus on how I had to adapt throughout our development timeline to succeed in producing and implementing this music as a one-man team. I will also share some insight on the scoping methodology and music design techniques I employed to manage the branching nature of our game. Our game's content was scoped to achieve the same length as the original Tales game. It was even built on the same structure, roughly following a similar storytelling arc and split into 5 episodes. With this in mind, I dove into the original game's data, deducing info and crunching numbers. I was hoping to find a foundation to plan out the game's music production and timeline. Yeah. I made the animation exciting because I'm reading. I found out the total minutes of music per episode, how the music was split between specific unique cues and pools of generic music, and how this generic music was split across various moods and contexts. With this info, I had a precise enough picture of the music content and how it was used in the game, essentially the score to a very long branching movie with a couple of video game bits. It was becoming clear that we had lots of music to produce. The original Tales contained 5 hours of music. To produce the same amount of music, I estimated we would need to plan for 15 months of music production. That's under the assumption that during this whole time, I'd be able to feed an external composer with relatively final game content. We had a project timeline of a bit under 2 years in front of us. Our production phase timeline was even shorter. This meant we would need to be cranking out music starting very early in the game production, beginning with composing the first pieces from concept art, storyboards, and rough work-in-progress script, and then adapt our workflow as we moved forward and hope this early work would prove useful later on. So with this in mind, after discussing the way forward, we decided to produce and compose the music internally. I would be composing the music to my first video game. This would give us maximum flexibility to work in the dark during the early stages. I could take any action needed to adapt my workflow from composition to implementation to the evolving production. The major unknown was if I could sustain producing such a massive amount of music, and I was really looking forward to take on the challenge. My first order of business was to research how to mitigate the problem of quantity. I needed to define a workflow that would enable me to produce the target amount of music as comfortably and efficiently as possible. One efficiency bottleneck I wanted to solve was having to juggle with a trio of Nuendo, Wise, and Unreal. My goal was to have all 3 software up and running at all times, allowing me to go from composing to testing in-game and back quickly and painlessly. This was achieved using 2 networked PCs, one of which hosts all sample libraries, virtual instruments, and most processing using Vienna Ensemble Pro, the software. I could have any virtual instrument permanently prepared and loaded, freeing the master PC of the massive CPU and memory load to run Nuendo, Wise, and Unreal. I could load up a music queue in a matter of seconds while still keeping a game build running if I needed to. During the early stages of the project, I would have concept art and story outlines up on my screens. I would browse through my synths and sample libraries, selecting sounds to build my first VE Pro and Nuendo session templates. This formed the palette upon which I compose all of the music later on. Using these sounds, I then started composing the first of what I call concept pieces, covering various scenes and locations, depicted in the concept art and plan for the game. There was no usable game script per se at this point, but these concept pieces established the music language for the game. I was setting the tone and musical expectations with the rest of the team and slowly building confidence on my end. I was also building musical material to go back to and work from later, once the actual game structure would come together. These tracks ended up being used throughout the game in various forms, which is nice. The first major milestone of the production. What's funny? Oh, okay. Sorry. The first major milestone of production was the making of our first playable build of the game. This would be my first time dealing with the branching aspect of our game. Of course, I dreamt of a score that adapted to the player's choices, scoring his own unique version of the story. I had every reason to think this wasn't possible to realize for a complete game under our timeline, but this prototype was the moment to go all in, then observe where I could scale down my ambitions. I scored every branching path of this 15-minute slice of the game. While the approach was technically feasible and the result was nice, I had confirmation that it wasn't sustainable for the full game. I would have to approach branching music smartly and save it for the most important moments of the story. Over the next few months, the story started to take shape through a quickly growing narrative script and detailed storyboards for every scene. It became possible for me to imagine how whole strings of scenes would play out and estimate the musical flow and timing of it all. I started creating what I call sketch music tracks using this process, further cementing the musical tone of the game, still with the aim of being able to edit these pieces further down the road to fit the actual gameplay. In the end, most of the final in-game music for episodes 1 and 2 of the game ended up being produced from the music composed during both the concept and sketch phases of the music production. As game production ramped up, I started having access to video renders of the scenes made from the rough motion capture and camera data, like Jonathan showed you earlier. From then on, I was able to produce game-ready music by assembling the cinematic scenes in Nuendo and score them. The pipeline evolved up to the point where I could compose on up-to-date rendered in-game captures of now shippable quality scenes with full audio and be able to quickly chart the branches across the various dialogue paths and mark checkpoints in my DAW sessions. I was now fully armed to deal with this game and take it to the finish line. This left me with the bandwidth to spend time finding solutions to deal with the branching nature of our game. The key challenge turned out to be finding out how to adjust a single musical thread to the timing variations between dialogue branches when progressing through a scene. For the most basic scenes, where the tone would stay consistent across the various dialogue choices, I would use a single looping music piece to underline the moment, or linear cues scoring the scene, navigating around the branching moments as necessary. Otherwise, timing variations could be handled in a few different ways. A typical scenario would involve a single thread of music that would alternate between linear sections and what I'd call waiting loops, over which a transition to the next music section could be triggered at any moment following the music's tempo and grid settings. This seems simple enough, but depending on the length, complexity, and importance of a scene, there could be a single uninterrupted music thread playing across dozens of transitions like these. While the stacking amount of timing variations makes it a challenge to score a specific moment-to-two picture, it results in the music loosely scoring the unfolding story along with the player's dialogue choices in a movie score-like manner. What I only did a handful of times in the game was to score individual dialogue choices with specific, unique music. As you can see, the number of components to cover these kinds of cases quickly goes up. Many factors made producing music in this manner cumbersome. For example, making complex branching structures in Nuendo can feel unwieldy and inefficient. And it became especially problematic at this scale of possible combinations of music sections and transition cases. Music pieces separating into distinct branches were made for a few critical moments of the game. An example of this would be the last half hour of the game, which begins with from a single story point and branches in two vastly different story branches at a decisive dialogue choice, and ends in multiple possible short conclusion scenes. All these possible branches and outcomes were scored with unique music. And to wrap up my part of the story, here's a few more thoughts. All the early work of setting the foundation for the production pipeline and defining the game's musical language really paid off in the end. I used and rearranged most of the music made early on, and the sound palette I had defined at the very start kept me composing at a swift pace when I could have been wasting precious late production time fiddling new sounds or browsing synths, presets, and turning knobs. During the whole project, I kept track of my music output. My eyes were set towards our final milestones, and I wanted to ensure I was always on target according to the production plan I had been building since early production. As a first-time composer, seeing the numbers allowed me to adjust when I wasn't hitting my targets and to build confidence and keep up the momentum when I did. Speaking of confidence, with all the solid foundation work I had done, after a while I could trust my musical instinct for this game and avoid overanalyzing and second-guessing my music too much. This kept me from spending too much time perfecting a single cue and helped me keep my eyes on the big picture. This brings us to the end of our presentation. We managed to pull from our experience in order to plan ahead for a very different kind of game production. Thanks to rigorous and creative groundwork and the help of the rest of our amazing development team, tools were developed, processes were put in place, and we built our expertise working on narrative games. In the end, we're very proud of the game we produced, and more importantly, how we produced it. So thank you for your time. And we hope you found our presentation inspiring, and you can take away something from it to help you on your own projects. And that's it. Now you can applaud. Thank you. Thank you very much. Merci. Merci beaucoup.